thought it might be quite interesting to talk a little bit about the differences between creating artwork with traditional media like pencils and paint compared to digitally. As someone that's recently crossed over into using a lot more digital in my artwork, I thought it could be interesting to compare them. So a little history of my illustration work. I started out in children's books where I would use watercolour and coloured pencils to do illustrations like this. I then kind of left the watercolour behind and started to do illustrations that were pencil, completely pencil like this, but then with digital colour added in Photoshop. And with Procreate and the iPad, I'm now doing more work that's entirely digital. In some ways I'm quite late to the party, as a lot of illustrators I know have been working using digital tablets like the Wacom or the Cintiq for years and years now, and in the past I had tried those, but I always found the experience of trying to draw on them really jarring and just not like the sensation of drawing on paper. I knew if I took the time to practice and adjust I could kind of get used to those changes probably, but there's the cost involved in buying a really good quality tablet, and also I was just quite lazy to go through the process of adjusting the way I work like that, so I never really got round to it. The first time I tried drawing on the iPad in Procreate with the Apple Pencil, I was really kind of taken aback by how much it just felt like drawing to me, just really natural. The thing that most people point to as being a different sensation is that the screen is very, very smooth. You're drawing on glass essentially. But I quite like that. I've always drawn on the smoothest papers that I can get my hands on, so actually I don't mind that at all. There are products you can buy to put over the screen of the iPad to make it feel more like paper, but I don't feel any need to do that because I kind of like how it feels. The other thing that I had to consider before buying the iPad was what size to get, because there are different sizes. Obviously the larger ones are more expensive, and I know a lot of artists who like to work on a larger scale, so they all recommended the large one, but I kind of suspected I would be alright with the smaller size, and I was right in the end. So this is the size of the iPad that I work on. It looks pretty small, and it is, but realistically when I draw, usually I rarely work on any paper that's larger than A4 unless I have to for some reason, so this is fine for me. And as a comparison, here are some of the sketchbooks I use, so yeah, page size is kind of, this screen is okay for me. As you're working on the iPad, some of the screen space will be taken up with menus within Procreate, and also if you've got a reference picture opened up that's next to the drawing you're doing, that'll take up some screen space as well. But for someone that's used to working on pages like this, I find this size absolutely fine. Something that always drives me absolutely crazy when I work with pencil is losing my putty eraser. I work with little pieces of putty eraser like this, which are tiny, and they're very liable to kind of roll away when you're working and you lose them. And they're a bit sticky, so they can get stuck to your sleeve and disappear and get stuck to the bottom of your sock if they end up on the floor, that kind of thing. So the great thing about the iPad and pencil is that they're kind of hard to lose. When the Apple Pencil first came out, a lot of people commented that they thought this little cap on the charger end there would be something that would be liable to go missing a lot. It hasn't happened to me yet. When I bought the pencil, I also bought a little case because I knew I would need that for taking it out and about in my bag. So anytime I take this off to charge it, I put it in the case immediately and close it, so it's never gone missing. Speaking of taking it out and about, the convenience of the iPad and the Apple Pencil for travelling, for going away, or drawing on trains or long flights or something like that, it's kind of amazing because it's so easy to pick up and put away at a moment's notice. If you're working on paper in a sketchbook, say you're working in paint, you've got the time of the paint drying to think about before you can close the book and put it away. If you're working in pencil, you've got smudging to think about, and then if you're going to carry a can of fixative spray, that's another thing you have to take with you. The most obvious advantage to working on the iPad is convenience. In order to make artwork, all you need is the iPad, the pencil, and a charger. That's all you need. With my old system of working in watercolour, I would start with a pencil sketch. So that's paper, pencils, pencil sharpener, putty eraser. So after creating the sketch, that would need to be scanned. So that's scanner, laptop and printer to print the line art out at the final artwork size. I would then need a light box or tracing paper to transfer the line art onto watercolour paper. So then obviously watercolour paper, which depending on the weight of the paper would sometimes need to be stretched on a board to stop it buckling. So that's a board, brown tape, plus clearly watercolour paints, paint brushes, paint mixing trays, jars of water, paper towels, sometimes masking fluid, and then my coloured pencils to finish off the artwork. When I stopped using watercolour, that took a lot of this out of the equation, but still left some of this stuff. And also if I was working in a soft pencil for some reason, fixative spray as well. With an iPad you can create the artwork and it's ready to send to a client or upload to the internet right away, and there's no stuff to tidy up as well afterwards. And if a client were to ask for some last minute changes, you wouldn't have to consider getting all of this stuff out again. You can very easily pick this up, do a quick change and put it away again. Back in the day when I was working as an illustrator using watercolour for my commissions, it would create an issue if I couldn't be in my studio all of the time. Back then I didn't live with my partner, so I would obviously every week or so travel to his house to spend 4 or 5 days with him, and I would have to plan my work so that it was at a stage where it could be portable. So that usually meant getting any watercolour painting stuff done and out the way so that I could just do the coloured pencil part of the illustration while I was there. But that would still involve taking all the exact coloured pencils that I needed, plus sharpeners and erasers and all that kind of thing. And there were always times when I would forget one really crucial item, and before I could start work on a particular morning I would realise I'd not got this thing with me, and then have to go out to the nearest art supply shop and sort of try and desperately replace the bit of kit that I needed. The worst thing that can happen with the iPad and pencil really is that you can forget to charge it, which only creates a delay of 15 minutes. That's how long the pencil takes to charge. I've never felt that traditional media is inherently better than digital in any way. I don't look at a drawing on paper and think that it means more to me because it's an original drawing on paper than if someone drew it digitally. If I like the image, I don't care how it was created. And it maybe helps that I've never been into fine art, really. I'm not huge on galleries and seeing kind of paintings in their original form. Anyone that knows me knows that I do absolutely love kind of graphic art in print form, like on paper. And I'm nerdily obsessed with print quality and paper stock and things like that. So I do love seeing artwork nicely printed. But any artwork can be printed as long as it's being created at a high enough resolution if it's digital. So to me there is absolutely no difference between artwork that's created with traditional media or that's created digitally. I just think for a working illustrator or artist who's working to tight deadlines often, the convenience of the iPad can't really be overstated. It saves a lot of time. You can take it with you if you need to be away from your workspace. So all that stuff is kind of incredible and I love it for that reason. In terms of downsides, the main one, the most obvious one, is that you're not left with original artwork that you can potentially sell. The first little self-published art book that I put out, that I made a print run of and sold, I didn't realise this really when I was working on it, but there was actually a lot of demand for people to buy the original art when I put this book out. I sold probably half of the illustrations really early on, and that was a really lovely unexpected income stream. And obviously if you work digitally there's no original that you can kind of sell in that same way. The only other downside that I can see to Procreate is compared to Photoshop, which I use every day in my marketing job to create graphics and things, is that you can't lay out text in the program. You can't work with text tools like you can in Photoshop. You can import text from another program and then use it within your artwork that way, or you can hand letter, but it's not for creating kind of text graphics like Photoshop is, and that's a really major thing. So for that reason I couldn't use it for the marketing job that I do. But for straight up drawing and creating illustrations, I'm a total convert to the iPad. I absolutely love it. I'm still astonished at how much it feels like drawing on paper. It feels really natural, and I'm kind of using it for almost all of the drawing I do at the moment. One thing that I found really interesting about working on the iPad is that it's helped with my appalling handwriting. I've always had terrible handwriting, and one thing I discovered early on was that the thicker the pen or pencil I was using for lettering, the neater I could manage to make my writing. The thinner the pen or the sharper the pencil, the more awful and spidery my writing seems to be. And what I've discovered working on the iPad is that the zoom feature can be used in the same way as using a thicker line to help me letter more neatly. I'll try and give you a demonstration. I'm going to try and write something as if I was using a pencil on paper and try to write as neatly as I can. The pencil tools in Procreate only go up to a certain size, and you might ask why not letter using a brush or inking tool, but my artwork always has a pencil look to it that I want to preserve, so I like my lettering to look like pencil as well. I hope you can see the difference. Obviously, it's still not brilliant, but it's a huge improvement. And the other great thing about doing this digitally is that I can go back and redo letters that I'm not happy with on the spot as I work. You probably saw me do it then. If I was working on paper, what I used to do with hand lettering, say I wrote this word and I thought that E is bad, I would do an alternative E just below it, scan it, and then have to go in Photoshop, erase the letters that I wanted to replace, grab the alternative letters, move them into position, which takes a lot more time than just redoing the letter in the same spot in the moment. The way that I've always liked to work with digital colouring is to get the colours down very roughly first, block them in, and then assess how the colour scheme is working. I know that there are programs you can use that kind of automate this sort of flatting process where you're just getting blocks of flat colour down, but so far I've not explored those. I just work in my own little system. Because what I love about digital colouring is that you can go in and adjust things without having to put a new colour down. So all my colours are on separate layers, and I'm not happy with the red one. So I can go into the hue and saturation and play with adjusting the levels to make it more harmonious with my colour scheme. I love trying to work with limited palettes because my natural instinct is to put every colour under the sun into a piece of artwork. So I like to set myself a palette that I'm going to use first and then see if I can stick to it. So once I'm beginning to be happy with the colours, I go in and, starting with the uppermost layer, get my eraser and start tidying up all the edges. This is kind of a fun stage because I've worked most of the colour scheme out by this point, so I can just put a podcast on and enjoy the mindless task of tidying up edges. So this is the page pretty much finished. As you can see, I've ended up with quite a few more shades on my palette than I initially had, but they're all still within a fairly narrow range of colours, so it keeps the limited palette feel. Another thing I've always done with digital colouring is play with texture layers. I like adding pencil texture to flat digital colour. Because I use pencil line work, I think it can be jarring to have that next to totally flat digital colour, so I often use overlays of pencil texture to break up the flatness. You can also get nice effects with the colour scheme by colorising this texture layer. But I also like experimenting with different blending modes too. Someone once told me to think of digital colouring as being like screen printing. You can add layers that will affect the layers below in different ways, and playing with the blending modes can be really interesting. This layer is just a layer of flat colour that's set to colour within the blending modes, and if I turn it off you can see the effect it's having on the other colours underneath it, also the texture layer here. So here's how the colours look without those two overlays, and because the layers have the effect of muting the colours underneath, I've had to increase the saturation of some of the colours underneath. Obviously you can set layers like this to different levels of opacity too, so the effects can be lesser or greater according to how it looks to you. If anyone has any questions about digital colouring or suggestions even, I'm really happy for you to drop me a line and kind of make this a conversation. So feel free to comment or email or contact me on social media if you've got anything you'd like to know or suggest about this stuff. I'm having a cooking day with my friend today, and there's one ingredient that I haven't managed to track down yet, okra. I have seen it in my area quite a lot, but yesterday I wasn't able to find it, so I'm about to go out and see if I can track it down. Yeah, so that's the first bit. A teaspoon of cumin. Should I try it?
Yeah, so 30 seconds, right? Go.
It's not.
Oh, it's not. I'm dead.
Okay, ready?
Yeah. Is that enough?
Yeah, I think that will help.
No, it's on a really low heat. Look at that.
Huh.
That's weird, right?
Yeah.
Very strange.
Right. We could press it on that table in there if you wanted.
Yeah.